who've gone into specializations and neglected the other functions. For example, if he's in marketing, he says, why should I study finance or why should I look at HR? It's not necessary at all. Now, this is a very difficult thing to explain to students because we have created specializations. But the fact remains that in real life, and all of us who have worked know there's no such thing as a pure marketing manager, a pure HR manager, or a pure finance manager. You have to be a complete if you want to be successful. So this is something that I think we need to get across to our students in many, many ways. And I'm very glad this is talking about them. Even if you do a product launch, you see as what you do. You charge a marketing, you have to get your people in place, that's HR, you have to get your IT in place, you have to have your finance in place, and obviously production has to be there for your product to be there. So it's all together. So unless a student can really understand how it all comes together, he is not a very complete manager. So I'm very glad that this session is being moderated by Dr. Day, and his panel will have a lot to explain to us on how this is. And we'd be very happy if you could see what are the ways of breaking these silos and what experiential learning should be all about. So without any further ado and without cutting into Dr. Day's time, I'd like to hand it over to him and request him to introduce his panelists and take the session forward. Dr. Please. Dr. Day, your sound is not coming. Not there. Yes, just something came. I'm not sure from whom. You have a sound problem.
I think it may be your mic, I suppose. The one which you are hearing, you're putting on head. This might be the connection with the system. Might be
have a problem. If you take it off, what happens?
Yeah, I think it normally helps.
Hear me now? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you came through now.
No, but it is very feeble, no?
No, it's fine.
It's okay.
It's fine.
1 second. Now better?
Absolutely perfect. Please.
Okay. So, thank you, Professor Chuck, for giving a very relevant introduction to this session. I would only add one more point to whatever you have said, and that is we are also supposed to deal with the challenge of incorporating extracurricular activities in our whole curricula.
Absolutely.
So many of you must be wondering why these two topics are together. Breaking silos, how breaking silos is connected with extracurricular activities. It is believed that any kind of practice of theory, any opportunity for the students to apply the concepts that she has learned in class in real practice situation helps in developing a skill and helps in understanding the phenomena well so that she can apply elsewhere. So that is why these two have been taken up together. You must have heard that what Chuck sir has said, that why should I read or why should I study HR if I have nothing to do with HR and I will be in marketing? Those kind of things we are trying to probe. Everyone knows that it is a bad thing for management education. It hampers the entire perspective and hence the ability to apply the knowledge gain. But nobody is very clear that what can be done so that the knowledge can be integrated for application, which are delivered in silos. Now for this, I had gone to our alumni and captured two of very senior alumni, both pass outs of 2005. One is Roshan George and the second one is Arnab Das. Arnab Das has come back to BIMTech for doing EFPM and currently he is enrolled as EFPM candidate. I have also captured two of our current students, Manavi Bolia and Sarath, to hear from them what do they think about these two questions, mainly the breaking the silos. So we will hear those 4 recordings. It is back to back. It will take about 14 minutes. and then I will chip in for 4 or 5 minutes, sharing with you some of the basic fundamental theories or concepts which will help us in understanding. I will be very brief on them. And while discussing in this panel, if you are alert or if participants can help us in directing the discussion towards finding some answers to teasing questions which was posed in our previous session, that is acting in a gap, that is going beyond syllabus, those kind of things. What is critical thinking? Why do you need reflection on all those things? Perhaps together with you and with panelists, we will be able to develop our little better understanding. You keep typing, keep entering your views, your comments, your suggestions in the chat box. We will not see the question answer box. We will see only the chat box. And either in between the panel discussions, we will take a few, or towards the end if time permits. Now let me try to give you the views of our students, alumni, as well as is it audible?
Perfectly.
No, your video is not yet on the screen.
Video is not there, so I think our audio.
Video is not there. It is just audio recording.
Audio is not clear, I think. There's nothing is coming, actually. You might have, I don't know whether you have to share it or what's the method.
Second one.
Is there a system of sharing it, Professor Dubey?
Dey sir, you can leave it. I will share it. Huh? I just located your mail.
हेलो, हाँ क्या हो नहीं रहा है यार?
सर मैं कर देता हूँ, आप चिंता मत करिए.
Sanjeev ji is trying to share it with everybody.
So just checking if you are able to see my screen.
Yes. Your screen. Yes, yes.
So there is no video as such, but there is some sound recording here. So let us see if the
Sure.
sound is coming properly. Otherwise, we'll have to try.
The shift today in many companies from
Needs to be louder, that's all.
Is good.
No,
Not so far. Very, very.
So I would ask you to increase your
Volume.
volume.
it is on maximum.
there's an increased
This is on volume.
skills.
Dr. Day's volume.
You may
Who's
still
volume?
spend a lot of time in function like HR or consulting or
Not audible.
It is, but not very audible. It's pretty soft. You have to really lean forward to hear it.
So this thing also is maximum.
We have set the voice on maximum, but not able to hear.
Try it again.
sales, but there is still a lot of need for generalists, and the need will still keep increasing over the next few years. The problem solving skills are today a very important requirement. Now, with that problem solving skills comes critical thinking. And critical thinking evolves when you have multiple teams sit together, address the problem statement. When I work on deals, it's not just about solution. It's not just about your core offering. It's also about the nuances in terms of addressing the key requirements of customers. Therefore, you have to really talk to multiple teams. It's not just your own solution team. It's also with sales. It's also with marketing campaigns. It's also with HR, depending on any rehiring requirements or any new resources that have to be hired in very key global markets, right? So therefore, you really need to be an integrator in order to really connect the dots and get the big picture. But there's no one definition of career success. But end of the day, your success is dependent on how good you are at visualizing all of these as one. So why should we really break the silo? So this is the jet age, the age of startups, unicorns, and for all of them to be successful, you need a well-oiled engine. So when I say a well-oiled engine, it's all about having all of these functions work together as one. Now look at the pandemic. It has changed the entire world. It has changed the way businesses are run. Every company today now needs to be tech-driven. They have to adopt technology to a way to remain sustainable, stay relevant. And when I say stay relevant, it's very important today for every one of us to stay relevant. It could be in your own specialist role, or it could also be in your own generalist role. But you can only stay relevant if you understand the impact of so many other aspects within your function or within the other functions. What should each one of you do?
Voice is gone.
Of why are you here, right? Adopt a case study approach effectively. So look at cases from all the angles, right? It's not just about, say, an HR case study. It's also about understanding what are the other aspects of HR, right? What are the other aspects of finance around that HR, right? So draw a picture, try to see the bigger picture and try to connect the dots. You can only do that if you come out of your silos, right? So it's important for you to really look at case from all angles. Next, pick up soft skills, not just in your specialization, but also across other specializations and in general. Soft skills are not just about speaking softly. No, soft skills are about trying to communicate the right message with the right mode and the right temperament and the right effectiveness. And what you do, a soft skill in HR may be a little different than a soft skill in finance. Right? The way you email, the way you pick up the phone and talk, or the way you want to communicate and articulate will only develop as you increasingly understand the other areas outside your function. And then importantly, be an integrator. I always tell, you should be the master of the ceremony, right? And that's the beginning of leadership. If you really want to be the master of the ceremony, please come out of your silos. Please break it and look at all aspects, right? You could still be your own leader, and only if you could understand the impact. And you can only do that if you really had that touch point and you had that experience learning with the other functions. Learn to collaborate, learn to be cooperative. And that's what will really help you be successful.
Hello, everyone. Well, I will share my views in two parts. First, my feelings as a student who passed out PGTBM and joined the industry. Second, as a recruiter who is managing employees for the last 16 years. When I joined LG Electronics through campus interview during my initial days, it was really difficult for me to establish the relationship between what I had learned and what I was doing. I failed to relate both. I was frustrated and furious, finding that what I had learned was not matching at all with what people were practicing. The organization was absolutely on a different tangent, and I was totally confused. Coming to the second issue, my inability to transit from a culture of learning to culture of performing. In a culture of learning, it is very easy. Reading a concept, go through the pages, and the assignment is done. But in a culture of performing, it was very difficult since you don't know how to put your knowledge into action. It looked to me like a jigsaw puzzle, and I was not able to put the blocks in the correct place. The third issue was that of goal realization. I did my PGDBM in marketing and operation, but I was doing sales. I was not sure of what I was doing and what I want to do in future. Hence, I think it is very important that every faculty should help the students to set the goal even before they decide to join the corporate world, and students are aware about their goals and future aspirations. Many at times we have seen quick and frequent job changes by budding managers, as they are not sure of what they want in life. Now, after 16 years and post recruiting significant number of MPs in different organizations where I have worked, I have my thoughts as a recruiter too. Firstly, I feel there is a significant capability and implementation gap in students. I'm not saying that the curriculum is not up to the mark. I think what students learn, they are not able to relate it with the job in hand. So I feel as a faculty and from the college side, we should constantly evaluate our students. We can take help from industry experts, whether the students are able to understand industry issues and whether they are capable to correlate the knowledge with the industry practice. Secondly, I feel that there is a lack of domain knowledge. I agree that students are well aware about the current affairs, they read newspaper, but that's not enough. They are not aware about the current practices. Hence, it is very important that in a class, faculty should take some examples from the industry and show them how the theories are being used. Secondly, when we are doing a case study, it is always better that before doing the case study, we take a case study perspective from an industry person. This will help us to give the students a different perspective and a new paradigm altogether. And this is how we can bridge the gap. My third observation is there is a total lack of an action learning mindset in students. Students are not aware about the process of introspection or unlearning what they have done and then go back and correct it. So this is one approach which we have to teach to our students. Whenever the student is making some mistake, please tell them to go back and introspect what they have done and then come back with a new thought and do something new, so that this action learning mindset starts developing in their mind. So this is what I feel is totally absent in our students. Overall, what I feel, there is a huge gap between what they are learning and what they are doing, and eventually what they are expected to do when they launch themselves in the corporate world. And considering these tough times with so much of competition, I think they should know how to introspect their day-to-day activities and improve upon it with a lesser turnaround time. Otherwise, they will be lagging somewhere or the other.
First question was about the multidisciplinary approach and how courses can be taught to overcome the problem of lack of appreciation by students for it. So one thing I've observed to be the case for me as well as a lot of my classmates is that due to this online mode, a lot of our learning has been through projects instead of an online class, because peer-to-peer learning experience was missing in our online classes. And for every student to understand the importance of this approach, one way could be by making the projects more integrated. So we do multiple projects as part of our internal. And while it is important to focus on some key concepts in every domain, we could do a single project which makes us dive into all the areas of business administration, so that the importance of this approach is felt and not taught. The second question was how we can balance curriculars and extracurriculars during our very short stay at a school, and how we can incorporate the being and doing components in our student experience. So in my opinion, MBA is already a very integrated course in terms of involving the students in various activities outside of the conceptual and theoretical part of management. And while students are encouraged to participate in more extracurriculars, nothing really makes it mandatory to a level where the student wants to go beyond the bare minimum that you have to do for extracurriculars. And majority of the times I feel that even if we like something, multitasking ruins it for us. Because if you're juggling assignments, club activities, and competitions, it's a good skill to have, but sometimes it's overwhelming. And sometimes it makes you feel like quality work can be compromised on because of the time. So, for example, we had the startup simulation in our e-lab class, and the simulation got really exciting by the time we reached it. But we did the simulation during the week where a lot of our assignment deadlines fell on that weekend. So we weren't able to devote a lot of time to that simulation, like as much as we would have wanted to. It was really exciting and engaging. So if we had more time to do simulations like the startup simulation or Markstrat simulation in lieu of written assignments, where majority of the work is done by copy pasting and rephrasing, it would help us learn more and enjoy it more. So this is what I feel would incorporate the doing and being components in our student experience.
Being an aspiring HR professional, I feel it's not just the HR subjects I should know, but also a multidisciplinary knowledge. With the help of ongoing internship opportunity, I feel it's not just HR concepts I'm using, but also the concepts of marketing and operations. For making the students to understand what is the importance of multidisciplinary knowledge, faculties must involve the cases from ongoing corporate field so that they can solve the problems with the involvement of the industry experts so the students can connect the dots between the theoretical knowledge and the actual way of corporate solving problems. While talking about knowing, doing, and being, it's not just management education, but the education itself should not constrain itself to knowing. It must be accompanied always with doing and being, where this can be achieved only when the management is trying to allow the students to involve in multiple tasks and giving them the direction how to manage their time equally for education, that is curricular activities and the extracurricular activities in the same way. By conducting the activities like debates and business plan modules and trying to focus on the education at the same time, the students can be clear in the knowing, doing, and being process.
हटा दीजिए मेरे ख्याल से.
Back to you, dear sir.
Now is it okay? No? Is it better? Okay. So I like the idea given by Madhvi, very practical idea, though she's just second year student. She said that out of so many projects that a student is supposed to do, why can't we have a fully integrated project which will run through all the courses throughout the year or something like that? That perhaps is practical. Now let me share with you just two thoughts so that we can make the context more clear and more relevant. The thoughts are about the learning approaches of the students. We teach, but the learning is done by the student. So if you deliver the same lecture to a class of 60, different people will assimilate and understand and apply differently. This differentiation is because of the basic content that the person has already and the learning approaches, the interest, motivation, and capability of learning that the person applies to the lecture. So it is said that there are three approaches of learning, and these three approaches are present in everybody. Every student, depending on his interest, motivation, and capability, can apply any of these. Taking example, in my childhood days, I was not comfortable with social studies. Civics I used to hate. Same thing going forward, when I came to, say, 10th class, Hindi was a problem. Otherwise, Hindi is okay. But Hindi, scoring Hindi was a problem. Going forward, a similar thing happens. It has happened for everybody. We may have many colleagues, many students who were not good in their classes, respective classes. They could manage to scrape through. But in life, they have done exceedingly well. My class topper of 12th, he wanted to do engineering, but in between he took admission in BHU, BSc, BHU. And first year of BSc, he plucked. He failed. He cannot fail otherwise. Okay. So these things are people say it is connected with the interest, learning interest, the motivation, and the capability of the person, how much effort he puts in. So there are three types. One is surface learning, which is just a rote learning, which is just to pass the exam. So a student knows that he has to study 30 odd subjects. He cannot do well in everything. So let me decide which all subjects I have to pass and which all subjects I may excel. So he applies surface learning in some cases just to pass, just to scrape through, just to clear the hurdles put by the passing marks and examinations. He concentrates more on the subjects he likes or the topics he likes. There, his deep learning comes into play. I will further elaborate deep learning a little later. Strategic learning is a mix of these two. So people who are smart learners, they mix up, they know when to apply strategic, when to apply surface learning and when to apply deep learning. That is what is strategic learning. Now we need little more elaboration about deep learning, because that is what actually creates interest and knowledge, and a knowledge that can be retained and applied. Deep learning has three components. One is higher order thinking. A part of critical thinking is here, reflexive thinking and integrative thinking. This is what the constituents of deep learning. Now, what is critical learning? Critical learning is agnostic of the content, is agnostic of the application. I take example. One, a lawyer, when he consults the client, he faces a lot of challenges, a lot of problems. So what he does, he looks at the problem, pros and cons, the advantages, disadvantages, risk and benefits, or all that. After knowing all these things, he suggests, he does some consultation. Similarly, a teacher, when he faces students who are not engaged, who are not able to understand, here also we try to understand why it is not happening, what are the problems that the person is facing or the processes he did, and try to overcome that. Similarly, a finance person, when he faces a big finance problem, he or she has to apply her mind, assess the situation. What I mean to say, the common element between these three is the critical thinking. And critical thinking is, don't go by a prescribed strategy. You develop the strategy after looking at the situation, after assessing so this critical thinking can be applied anywhere. That is what is critical thinking. So if we can make students a good critical thinker, perhaps he will become a lifelong learner, because in every situation, his mindset will look for the good, bad, indifferent, the risks, the benefits, etc., and then choose a path to solve that. This much is reflexive thinking and integrated thinking are actually combined. Reflexive thinking is that unless you try to reflect upon, unless you try to assimilate, understand the meaning, you will not be able to apply it elsewhere. So reflection is for actual assimilation, for actual understanding the meaning, and then only we can apply in a different situation. Integrative thinking is, unless you have reflected, you will not be able to integrate. My best example is that I always ask in supply chain class that given a single window opportunity to forecast, how will you decide how much quantity will you order? Now, this has a connection with with management accounting. People don't realize that, and they give absurd answers. The correct answer is that they have been taught marginal revenue and marginal cost as a part of management accounting. So apply that here. Ask for data, ask for average values, ask for probabilistic distribution of demand, all those things, and apply it. They never do it. If I ask the students that, how will you apply cost leadership as a strategy to a school teaching from KG to 12? Tell me, what will you do? They don't understand. So this is what is required as integrated learning. If he has not learned and not understood the marginal cost and marginal revenue and how it can be applied to price and how it can be applied to projecting a demand, he will not be able to do that. With this much background, I invite my panelists, Professor Akbar, a doyen in strategy, Professor Sanjeev Shankar Dubey, a very, very astute IT professional, also a very prolific writer of books, writer of textbooks as well as poems. And finally, Ankur Kulashrestha, who will bring the young and dynamic perspective of finance to this discussion. I would expect that perhaps Dubeji will tell us that how a digital environment, how digital tools can or cannot help in integrating the knowledge, breaking the silos. Similarly, I would expect Ankur to cite some examples in finance or anywhere else where he has experimented through financial understanding or financial knowledge to bring in integrative knowledge. Professor Akbar is benefited because strategy is known to integrate everything. Strategy, capstone, projects, etc. So we would like to hear from Professor Akbar, how can we effectively or increase the effectiveness of that integrated learning? So my first question is that can we find some kind of solution or possible many solutions to integrate knowledge, the knowledge which is delivered in silos, how can it be integrated? That is what is parochially called breaking the silos. I would first go to Professor Akbar. Can we hear your voice, sir? Professor Akbar.
Yeah, I think, thank you for giving me this chance being part of this important event. And the theme that is very much connected to my own subject. And even if I don't want to teach them in silos, I think even if I want to teach them in silos, I cannot, because that's the nature of the subject is like that. It really rotates around a lot of functional areas. And of course, the domain-specific knowledge. So I was just looking, what are the, why there are silos? That's one of the major questions that we need to address. If you know why the silos get created, is it because of fault as business schools? Or is something which is, I think, coming from a very different source? So there are, I think, 4 sources that I could locate. I think one of the things is our own evolutionary system. In the evolutionary system, typically, I think we've been searching for short-term solutions and not so much integrated solutions, but more, I think situation-specific, issues. And that short-term thinking doesn't let you peep into the long-term, and we therefore deprive you a lot of solutions. You jump to the first solution that appears. That's the evolutionary, I think, biology will tell that's what we have imbibed. The other thing, which is the latest one, the 2 Nobel laureates, they talk about the fast thinking and the slow thinking. So we build in a kind of thinking structure in the mind over a period of time where I think getting things quickly done, or which you could call fast thinking or system 1 thinking, I think it's a lot more easy really to navigate the whole, solution. But that may not be an effective solution, because I think as I was, when I was very young, I studied the definition of learning. To me, it tells the modification of behavior, right? It's a very basic definition. And I think as evolutionary beings, it's really very hard for us to change our behavior. So whether it has come through biology or it's come through sociology, which means the socialization. So therefore, I think the system two thinking, which is essentially relates to your, I think the structured thinking, I think which puts pressure on you, which asks for modification of behavior, which need to be trained. And the third thing to enforce, I think this kind of, faster thinking, passing exams, strategic thinking, or strategic goal to passing exams or getting smarter in getting grades. I think the past schooling has been responsible for this. So this also created, I think, some kind of pressures for us to, get into subjects, and therefore, if it's a mathematics, then we become very strong in mathematics. There's no interconnection with other subject. So that has also created this structure for silos. And the third is the socialization process. I think where I think the grading system, which is dependent on the silos, you're rewarding silos as specialized ones, not the very what you call more integrative thinking. There's no scope for learning those patterns, and therefore it results into some kind of I think silos. The fourth, so I talked about the evolutionary thing. I talked about the I think socialization and the compartmentalized learning in our early school days. The final destination where we are going into office, notwithstanding what people are saying, but the fact is we're recruiting people into the jobs for a specific role. And that is highly specialized. Now, what does the student do? He has to get strategic again to think of what kind of job I'm going to get, and therefore prepare for that. And therefore, I think forgets again. So therefore, the corporate world does talk about integrative thinking, but I don't think many of them practice that. So that is another problem. So both from the past to the future, in between the school, I think all are really reinforcing the same kind of silos. So it's really, really difficult to break them. And so there are biological reasons, the social reasons. There are, I think, pre-experiences from school and the post-experiences of the college, like BIMTech, going to the industry, I think creates pressure for thinking of what is the most relevant for that job or getting that job. So therefore, notwithstanding what the corporates people talk, we had a lot of discussions in IIM Lucknow. We brought in a lot of executives, they talk a lot of things, but I think none of them make sense. Majority of it doesn't make sense because they are not the expert in learning theories. So that's the problem. So they tell what they experience. Certainly, I think you may face problem because you're really originating from a background which I think makes you more think of specialization rather than a generalization. So therefore, I think the structure of MBA courses is really, I think, where we have more specialized courses and then have some integration courses. So I suppose, I think there are a range of subjects that are taught in order to inculcate different kind of vocabulary. So we learn at least different concepts. If you don't learn the different concept, how do you integrate? So this is a dilemma of specialization versus generalization. You have to really specialize. You have to have specialized learning before you really start integrating. So therefore, I think the sequencing of business school, I don't think there is anything seriously wrong with that. The only thing is that perhaps we are not doing enough in terms of action. So that is number one. Number two, should I get to the second question or do I stop here in the analysis part? This is my analysis, the recommendation part. I can bring in second part because let others also speak, then I can come back. How do you intend to go, or I just finished that?
Sir, I would suggest that you continue so that, your thought process is not disturbed.
All right.
Otherwise, Day sir can decide.
So no, I can suggest that let us. He has very rightly pointed out the sources of siloization, why silos take place. With that, can we hear from you, Professor Dubey, that what are your views, not about, say, why silos are created, but some tips on how silos can be broken?
Okay, sir. So I just picked up two keywords from Akbar sir's this thing. One is that he says that there is a debate between functional specialization as well as generalization. So MBA program is supposed to be generalist because people from various streams come up. Somebody is coming from arts background, somebody is coming from engineering background, somebody is coming from law, commerce, etc., etc. So given this premise, and the second premise which I picked up from Dr. Mathur's opening remarks, that only 25% students are employable. And then we heard this our alumni speak about that when we started to execute things, we found that we are ill-equipped. So let us agree that our education is not meeting our stakeholders' aspiration. Okay, whatever reason it is, but forget about that. But this is not meeting our aspirations. Now coming back to Desar's question is that what are the tools? Okay, how will you do? Now I reflected upon my own industry this thing where the student come up, and this kind of competency model we try to create to break the silo, because they also have the same problem. The sales, marketing, pricing, technology, all these people try to work into different domain, and they do not talk to each other, and as a result of which the customer starts suffering. And in our case, who is the customer? The students are our customer. Who is another customer? The corporate is our customer. Maybe the other society is our customer. So what industry try to do is, and then there is a technology which is acting as a cementing factor. Okay, so there the group were divided into three things along the cube. You can specialize in a function, you can specialize in an industry, and then you can specialize in few technology. So my perspective of doing this is very simple. I want to divide the entire curriculum, okay, into three segments, you know. And the first segment I am saying is the capital letter I model. We start with something of everything. That is where our core fundamental principles will be applied. Then we are going to the next level, which is called everything of something. That is where our specializations comes in. But finally, we are going to end up with integrating all together, which is a doing perspective. And that could be achieved through industry roles, integrative papers, project, dissertation, business plan, contest, etc., etc. I will come back to explaining it at a later date. So keep this framework in mind. In terms of the tools and technologies, doing joint projects is a great idea. Okay, but before we reach out to the students, we first have to break the silos among ourselves. Okay, we have to create courses which are together. You know, I tried doing it. As a matter of fact, when I started, Akbar sir knows, I started teaching in IIM Lucknow. I said, I want to teach IT strategy. So the first question Bharat Bhaskar asked that which department, you know, is it IT or strategy? I said, no, it's an integrative course. He said, tab to tum padha nahi paoge, because it has to be sponsored by a department. So I said, okay, fine, I will teach in the IT side. Okay, now one action point for all of us is, and perhaps Dr. Chaturvedi wants some action out of this discussion, is that can we create courses which are together? I have tried to do it, and many people are trying to do it. I'm not saying that we are doing something great or exceptionally distant, but as a team, we need to decide, can we break our own silos? Okay, use tools, you know, use tools which like the tool which we can collaborate as a team. What is the tool we are using today? Zoom. As a matter of fact, all of us are able to talk very quickly, very easily. This is just one tool, but that is not going to be enough. We can use Trello. Okay, we can use. There are many tools which are available, provided we want to collaborate with each other. So I'll stop here, sir. Go back to your second question.
Thank you. I like the idea that we should break our own silos before we try to remove silos from the students' learning. Thank you for this thought. Now I come to Ankur. Ankur, give us some fresh ideas. We are all old. We are repeating our experiences. A 1 year experience repeated 20 times doesn't mean that you have 21 years of experience. So you give us some fresh idea. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Desar. I think the advantage or the disadvantage of speaking in the end is that there is very little ground left to cover. As a matter of fact, both of my key points have been covered, one by Manya, the other one by Professor Dubey. But nonetheless, let me put my points across. I think in the very first instance, I would like to, acknowledge the fact that as a B school, if we are doing imparting specialized knowledge, we are not doing anything wrong. We've been trying to address and service our customer, which is the industry. Because I'll take you back, when the global financial crisis happened in 2008, 2009. 10 years before that, so early 2000 to 2010, pretty much that's the decade that I'm referring to. All the companies, all the industries wanted a plug and play model, and the processes were set, the scales were increasing, and every company, every recruiter wanted a workforce on which they don't have to train. So there was a lot of backward integration seen in the industry where they were sponsoring different programs of the B schools, and that's where that not only specialization but super specialization concept came up. So I'll take you example from my domain. We are from accounting and finance. So they're like, no, tell me whether you're accounting or finance. No, finance. No. Within finance, are you a risk manager or are you a portfolio manager? I'm a portfolio manager. No. Within portfolio, tell me whether you're an equity or a derivative. You see, so you're creating smaller funnels out of the bigger, pool, and that was done at the demand of the industry. But as the technology is playing an important role of disrupting the business models, as the business becomes much more uncertain, the industry themselves don't know what they will be doing, what products or what services they will be offering after 3 years. Therefore, now they need a workforce which is more agile and which is more flexible. And in the last 10 years, whenever we have gone and met the industry for an academia meet, the response that we have got is that we don't need specialized training to be given by the B schools. That's the role of the industry and the training department. You just prepare them, give them good foundation. So I don't think we have done something wrong by offering solutions. We perhaps at worst maybe a little late in adapting to that. Now coming back to the solutions, I think I tend to absolutely agree with Professor Dubey that unless we change at a program design level, it will be very difficult for a student to do that. And so I had two suggestions to offer. One was at a very transactional level, which can be implemented let's say from tomorrow, is to have let's say, so in trimester 1 there are 6 courses, and every course faculty tend to give out a project. So it should be compulsory for every course faculty to combine the project with the other faculty, so that let there be only 3 projects, but the size and scale of those projects is bigger. Now, which 2 courses will combine, what will be the degree of integration, that's a matter of debate, and we'll have to kind of spend more hours on that. And whether only 2 courses will combine to make 1 project, or could it be 3? Yeah, so these are the things that we'll have to kind of debate. So that's very transactional in a way, but it's very high, effective, because the student is going to start looking at the B school education not subject wise, but at least module wise or bundle wise. The second and a little more transformational thing, which Professor Dubey again and mentioned and highlighted by Professor Akbar as well, is to change the curriculum design in a big way. If you see the last 5-7 changes that are happening, we are trying to strengthen the silos in a way. The finance domain is becoming stronger and more, disintegrated with the marketing domain. We're trying to launch course which is super specialized. But I think the time has come to launch courses which cuts across multiple courses. So HR analytics is a classic example where it has already happened. Financial econometric is a classic example where it has already happened, and today there is a big market for both of these courses. So we'll have to define such courses. A few of them come to my mind is, let's say, marketing of financial services. So let's say in BIMTech trimester 3 I take up financial services, but I take up the technical side of it. Perhaps if we can add 10 hours to it, and we can have a marketing person also to kind of point. So that can really augur for a more comprehensive understanding. Similarly, there could be other courses such as organizational dynamics at FMCG, or let's say IT challenges for e-commerce. So you see that you're combining an industry knowledge vis-a-vis a functional knowledge. So it's like a matrix structure coming together to form one. So I think these are the 2 things. The second one being more transformational, needs much more academic bandwidth from the management side as well, to kind of give out that holistic learning. So these are my initial views, Desa.
I heard from you are 2 things. One, you are perhaps recommending an immersive kind of knowledge transmission among these students. More holistic, defined domains, but go deep into that T shape with a longer length of T. The second one I heard that we have really gone for super specialization, building up more silos. Rather, we should combine few subjects or two subjects either through delivery or through projects, so that the receiver can understand that business education is nothing about only finance or only marketing. It is a combination of all. That's what I heard. Perhaps you're very right. I like this idea. Now, coming to the second question, we have to be now brief. I would request everyone to share their views within, say, 3 minutes, so that we can have some time for question answer. The second question is that whenever the academic planners and program executors, the curriculum designers, they always face a challenge, because in a short duration of about 2 years, a student is exposed to maximum 1100 or maximum 1200 hours of class contact. And apart from that, he has some SIPs, he has some short-term projects, he has many other things. So the question is that at the same time, we understand that extracurricular activities is a must. We should have adequate dose of extracurricular activities because they build skills. So in this direction, what is your thought that how do we face the challenge, or how do we overcome the challenge as to how much of extracurricular activities and what should we do with that? Because my biggest problem is with extracurricular activities that there is no measure whether it is really imparting a skill or not. There is no motivation for students to come and participate. So we leave it loose. So anyway, I'm not asking for that question to be. What is your view? Let us begin with Professor Sanjeev Dubey this time. Dubey sir.
Okay, my take is that extracurricular activity should also center or should be embedded with our learning and about the subject or about the education. I mean, saying that we are trying to help some social work, it will help us our leadership skill is fine. I don't have any problem with that. But let us try to find out those activities which are going to impart their foundation of what they have learned already. I mean, I've got one example which we can search a little bit more for our marketing faculty. Professor Sarad Sareen runs for 25-30 years an activity called marketing fair, okay? And where the students are supposed to design some fair, and then they will invite the local people, and then through which they collect all the data, etc. The details can be found out. Now, at the end, everybody has to participate in groups in doing this marketing fair, and then they have to collect data, blah, blah, blah. And that's an extracurricular activity because they are trying to also bring in people from outside. They have to create some kind of tent and all that thing they have to do. So my take is, let us design extracurricular activity focused in the, let's say, the courses which we are teaching it. Maybe focus around 2 courses or maybe 3 courses or throughout the semester. Okay. In this semester, this is the extracurricular activity which is covering these 3, 4, 5 courses. It could be a project report. It could be doing anything. And there are a lot of online medium available. We can spend time in finding out students to create their avatars. Okay. And doing all kinds of activity. I am there to help. But we can use that.
Sound.
I agree with you. And I also know about Sharad Sareen's experiment, which he has been doing for last many years. But there is another aspect of that. And that aspect is in that everyone is involved. They have to do it. Plus, during the period, they have a target that if you invested, say, 2,000 rupees, you have to bring back 4,000 rupees, something like that. There is a measure of it. And it is aligned to whatever learning goals are there in marketing that way. So if I agree with you that this is the best way of doing a project or an extracurricular activities. Now coming to Professor Akbar, what are your views, sir?
Yeah, I think I just take from where I left. I think firstly, I said the case method as a very good source of integration. So we should increase a little bit of more of course teaching with the more strategic orientation. For instance, when you talk about strategic marketing or strategic finance, you should link up with the overall strategy of the company. So that will bring in some kind of integration. The second is the simulation, which also brings in, I think, multidisciplinary aspect in your thinking. So that's the second thing. The third, I think has been mentioned, but I can repeat that. The functional projects can be integrated towards the end of the semester or towards the end of the year. So you can have a broader thing. A student continuously keep on building small projects and then eventually integrates towards the end, which has its own credit load. So integration itself gets a credit load and you assign different faculties to that. So this is another one. And I suppose I personally think these activities are very critical because there is something that you are doing. Unfortunately, the measurement problem is there. We have, I think, two festivals at IIM Lucknow in the past we have seen. One is the disguised research in marketing, as mentioned by Professor Sanjeev Dubey. It's been going on for almost like 30 years. And of course, we have the Manfest. So that brings in a lot of, I think, integration of activities. Good part is that they are actually not scattered all over the year, but there are two specific slots that are given. The rest of the time, students are really concentrated in their studies or have their own clubs in which, I think, let's say consulting club, they get an assignment from somewhere and they work for it. So there are individual clubs, but most of the time, the broad activity, institutional level activity is really these two functions. Manfest, which is management festival, a lot of events happen, 4 days. And then 3 days, I think you get the disguised research in marketing. The two methods which actually brings in a lot of good things in terms of integration. And obviously, I think towards the end in the course curriculum, I think one side doesn't fit all because different levels of students coming in and therefore different levels of learning levels, they're already located. So how do you bring them together? I think this what you call team-based kind of learning is really, really very, very helpful because I've seen even we had the problem of reserved students, how do they really become really good? So I think as we consciously, I think form teams where I think some of the CSC students will be put into brighter students, companies, and they learn quite a bit. By the end of the, I think very few students will be left out, which are not really equally good. It's become very difficult whether they can be discriminated in terms of their competence. So this is another thing I suppose we'll have to do since we do not have that problem, but we have problem of weaker students and good students. Both categories exist. So possibly teams can be formed based on that as well. Besides, functional areas of learning. So these are some of the, either you can have a thesis or a business plan. I have seen my personal experience of teaching entrepreneurship. I think business plan has been the most integrated. The student have continuously given the feedback. The most integrative thing is your business plan because you are forced to think. You just can't write a business plan unless you think of all the interconnections. So that integrated thinking is really becomes very strong. So maybe we introduce, since we are entrepreneurship course, so we introduce this, which continues for throughout the years, and they refine that continuously and continue to refine their business plan, and therefore will learn more integration. So these are some of my thoughts on this.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your valued comments and views. Now, quickly, we have another 15 minutes left. If Ankur can finish in 3-4 minutes time, his views, we can invite some questions and take up some questions.
Right. So I think to my mind, as you said, Professor Day, that it's not a question of whether these experiential learnings and extracurricular are important. I think it's a binary question. Everyone's going to answer it as yes. The debate here is how much is the level of integration with the curricular that you are you're willing to afford, because there's a clear-cut opportunity cost in terms of time. I think that design, to my mind, depends upon 3 critical factors, and that's individual to every institute. The first factor is what kind of profiles in terms of placement you're getting and what is the skill that they are expecting. The second is what is the level of student that our institutes are able to attract, and this is a generic discussion, and perhaps we can make it more specific to BIMTech later on. But every institute will have some heterogeneity, but largely a homogeneity. So we have to kind of profile it on a perceptual map as to which is the cadre of students that we are attracting. And experiential learning is going to be very different for a 70 percentile versus a 90 percentile, if at all we take CAT as a parameter. And the third very critical important parameter is, which is more often than not overlooked, is what is the resource bandwidth that the institute has to implement these experiential learnings? Because more often than not, a traditional learning requires much lesser resource in terms of time and money compared to an experiential learning if done properly. So, so many times it happens is that there is an academic calendar with a lot of experiential courses inbuilt into it. It happens at different places. But unless done effectively well, and assessment is again a very, very critical point to that, because having an experiential course, students submitting a project about it, but unless you're willing to put that time of the faculty member to grill that student well, and to set a culture, otherwise we hear feedback that experiential learning is a good way to, take something which is less taxing. So that kind of a brand is very dangerous for any institute to kind of get for the experiential part. So here are my last three suggestions as to how can we increase the importance of experiential learning. I think the first is that we got to assign adequate credits for A, participation, and B, winning in certain competitions. So even by participation, the student should be given certain kind of credit. And so just think about it that way. So if, let's say, I take up a course on M&A in trimester 5, if a student says I don't want to participate in the class, but let's say I want to go to a competition in IIM Ahmedabad, it's okay. I mean, if the student hasn't done one course which is taught in your B school, but has accomplished something outside, it's student's choice at the end of the day. We can't forcefully, ask everyone to take every course. So I think adequate credit system is one of the first points. Second is, like I said, it's an intelligent system of assessment. So an example of that will be, if a sports person is, let's say, participating in a football competition, then do we have a project which asks him or her to write the fundamentals of group dynamism or teamwork that he or she was able to see and demonstrate a solution out of that? So can you combine what you do on the field with a relevant project so that participation in a sports should not only become entertainment, but is also part of a B school learning? And the third and critical suggestion from my side will be to explore the subjective feedback. Now, these days, these schools have numbers and quantitative transcripts, wherein the CGPA is, the king, and that drives the ABCD grades and all. Do we know how much student is more, apt at solving problems? Do we know which student is more of a critical thinker, as the point is? Does the faculty have, flexibility in highlighting a shade of gray from the other? The moment you're calling it grades, you're combining all 90 and 85% to get, into one. But the skills that they have is very different. So today, a lot of placement, recruiters are asking for qualitative feedback about these students. And experiential courses are very suitable to provide such, qualitative feedback. There is a college, Hampshire College in US, which does not give any grade or any number. It's only the transcript is very qualitative, I'm told. So look at from a point of view of a recruiter. Let's say a KPMG comes up. They don't see the number of a CGPA, but they look at different skills and how has the student performed. The grades are missing, but the qualitative feedback is there for all the courses. So that makes it the reading of the intrinsic value of a student much more easier for the recruiter also. So I think with these things we can make a start. It's a very again, taxing in terms of academic bandwidths and all of that stuff. It's a bit of risky thing as well. It's not there in India as much, but you can't change the output unless we're willing to change the input considerably. So I think with that, I'm going to call it a day.
Thank you, Ankur. Thank you for sharing your views. Very, very vivid and very logical way of looking at things. I have here very interesting question coming from Shubhanjan, and I would request if Professor Akbar would like to respond to this. It's a little eye-opening kind of question, and that question is, he asks, will it make sense to say that silos are also created because most faculty do not engage in scientific research? Your comment, sir. What it means that if we engage in more research, perhaps we will be able to combine and remove silos. What is your take? We are short of wisdom. So I am throwing this question to the person who has most wisdom in our group. You are mute, sir.
Sorry. I think they may be related, but I suppose they are very independent kind of orientation. I think research, if you have very strong research, it doesn't mean you can really carry it to the class, right? Because many times the whole research thought is very, very, I think, narrow. And that narrowness actually takes away, brings in the more specialization than actually the generalization. Because when you look for the gap in research, so you get more and more narrow into that and figure out what's the gap. But there are, of course, researches which are really very broad-based and can really integrate things. Like, I think, those kind of theoretical thing. So to me, it appears, I think there are two different kind of orientation in general. But they can be a common, I think, ground, but they are very different, I think, orientations in terms of learning. For PGP students, I think the integrative learning is definitely very critical and the demand is growing in that direction. But in the past, it was, I think, absolutely fine. So,
thank you, sir. I have another interesting question coming from Professor Arvind Shukla. He asked, can we have 1 or 2 case studies in every course nearing the end of the term where students' analysis of the case is commented upon by faculty members from different areas? His attempt is to integrate through case where comments of different area faculty can help. So, Dubey sir, would you like to take it up?
I think it's a great idea. And I was looking at the cases being taught in various areas, and most of the cases I found was for the tech startup companies. Okay, they're talking about Jara, Airbnb, etc., etc. Now, if we are talking about, because the world is about, these are the companies which are being discussed, talked, and they are being studied. So if such a idea is taken about the case, maybe I will be willing to surrender some part of my marks or credit to the case which is being discussed in the strategy or marketing, wherever it is. And what is the problem? We can have one case which is being discussed across multiple subjects.
Thank you, sir. Now, Ankur, this is for you. Another interesting question from Riti. She asks that since in today's job scenario, people today are more inclined to switching over 3-4 jobs or more in their career, it will be enriching to know the viewpoints of us on how breaking silos can help students in managing such transitions. How these silos breaking will help in job switching or career transition.
Yeah, so I think it's a very relevant question in today's time. Although this phenomena, as a matter of fact, has gone down a bit. So I see many students sticking with their first job for a much longer time. But anyhow, that's a different dimension. So to answer Riti's question, I think the more generalist you are, the openness of a new employer to recruit you goes up, and the opportunity landscape that you can address and target also goes up. But at the same time, at the flip side of it is a point that you are not a specialist of anyone. So again, it's a good trade-off that you have to kind of keep for oneself. So typically there are two functions, the line function and the staff function. So you have to visualize yourself as to after 10 years or 15 years, which function would you suit better in. So I think Riti, to me it's a balancing act that one has to do. It's also a matter of, a lot of times it's a matter of opportunity, that sometimes you're forced to take up a job even if you don't want to, and then you switch it on and all of that. So I'm going to give a qualified answer to that extent. Yeah.
Okay. I would like to add to that. The person has to be inclined for lifelong learning. What it means that whatever he has learned in one job or in one period, he should be able to carry it further and build upon that brick by brick. If he keeps doing this way, perhaps he will manage the transitions successfully. What is your view, Professor Ghosh? You have been listening very quietly.
Sir, thank you. I just have a question or a thought, and again, a little provocative. We talked about breaking silos by integrating courses or integrating multiple functional courses with faculty coming from different functions to teach such a course. Professor Ankur Kulshrestha's mergers and acquisition is a very good example. I mean, you can have a financial angle to that, you can have a strategic management angle to that, and you can have an HR angle to that. Post merger, how well does the merged entity does on the people front. I have a little more radical thought. You see, in many business schools, faculties are organized functionally. Functions hardly talk to each other. So when functions themselves function in silos, how can we have a more integrated or integrative approach? So the question is that besides the functional affiliation that all of us have, could there be an alternative organizational structure that brings faculty from different functions together under certain schemes? For example, there could be sectoral studies, which are sector specific and requires faculty from multiple functions come together to work on those challenges or problems. So your thoughts, sir?
Okay, thank you. Another question is that how can we remove silos when recruiters themselves ask for siloized expertise? So I think, how will you react to this, Professor Akbar? Quick reaction to this?
See, the issue is, I think, just as I think Professor Kulshrestha has said, there is a kind of transition that is happening in terms of not looking for too much specialization, but a little bit of generalization. So that's a good trend for really looking for more integrated solutions and giving integrated skills to the students. So that's, I think, in the correct direction. In the past, it's been the other way happening. Now, but I think you still have a kind of, the job requirements still very reasonably specialization focused. So I think the only reason is because you can, the unfortunate part is, which is not being taught here is, and we do not tell that while doing your job, specialized job, you might end up by investigating variety of areas of management, which is not really communicate very clearly in our teaching. I mean, if for instance, you are not even HR, you're doing analytics, you're doing just market research, but it involves a lot of skills which come from, let's say, marketing, convincing, your respondents to be convinced that they should really give you the right kind of response in the market research. Similarly, analytics will come at the, I think, the analysis time. So I think you get multiple usage happening there. This is what students do not realize. Although the job is specific, corporate job is specific, but still need, I think, the linkages to be very clear in the courses. This is where you can make them a little more ready for the jobs.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Dev, we are running out of time. We need to pack up. We'll have external speakers coming.
I am packing up. I can see your restlessness. I can see your anxiety. Yeah. And I'm very grateful to all the three panelists to put together a very meaningful, insightful discussion. I hope people will have many takeaways out of this, and wish you all the best.